Hello, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be following me making some summer trousers. It's June, it's been really hot and I just needed some extra trousers for the warm weather. I have cotton and I have a pattern, so seemed like the time was right. So here is the pattern that I'm using. It's a new look pattern. 6859. It is straightforward. It's actually a pajama pant pattern, but trousers are all constructed the same way, so it makes no difference. It's just a very simple pattern, which is all you want for summer trousers. And you can see that I have my pattern laid out, ready to cut, and my thread there that I just matched. This is a really nice petrol colour print. My pattern is laid out with tins of vegetables because I don't like to put pins in the corners because I like to reuse my patterns and I have never made any pattern weights, so tins of vegetables will do. I have to extend my table to be able to cut, and it's not long enough to cut both legs at once. But while the table's extended, I am going to cut a second pair out of this black and white floral as well. That fabric was given to me by a really kind person who was not going to use it for the intended purpose, so gave it to me, and that's been really useful because now I'm in need of trousers and I have the means to make them. Hi! So now what I'm doing, after cutting out all my pieces, I am overcasting the edge of all the pieces. It's not usually detailed in patterns to do this at this stage, but you'll be glad you did if you do that, because it does make everything easier later. So I hope you can hear me over the machine. I've just got my overcasting foot on. I have my machine set to a fairly wide and close zigzag, and you just stitch on the outside of all the pattern pieces. You see that, enclosing the edge. It'll save you a job later and it makes the pieces much easier to handle. You do need to cut some of it away sometimes, but it is so much easier to overcast them before you stitch them together. I think it should be listed in every pattern. So here are all my pieces now, all cut out and edged. We have the two backs here, the two fronts here, and 4 pocket pieces. I should have said before that I don't do the overcasting on an overlocker. There's the overcasting. Because I've just spent ages cutting out my pieces and I don't want to start messing about with blades and things on an overlocker. Also, overlockers use a lot of thread. They're difficult to rethread, and you end up using a non-matching thread to overlock, risk cutting your fabric, and also it's a hassle threading it and getting it out. So I'm perfectly happy with overcasting on my main machine, and that's what I mainly do. So the first step of the actual construction is to sew the front and back legs together at the inside leg seam. So you can see I've got my front and backs laid together, my notches there. So what I'm going to do is sew this way with my right sides together, sew on the inside leg seam. I'm going to do that on both legs. And so you can see here the inside leg seam sewn together and pressed open. Do press your seams, it does make a difference. The next step is to stitch the crotch seam together, if you can see that. It's the large U-shaped seam that make the rise. And that's the next step to stitch together now. So I'm going to stitch all the way around here, and I will probably do it twice because this is a seam that takes a lot of stress. So here I've stitched the seam all along, stitched it twice. Can you see that? The 2 rows of stitching, there it goes. Yeah, stitched twice, just for strength because it's a stress seam. There's a small area, that's why I'm trying to make the curve show. There's a small area that needs clipping. I would say from about here to here to here. It needs clipping down to make the seam narrower. So you just clip it down and make it about 1/4 of an inch instead of 1/2 of an inch. So literally just half the seam over that curve, like that. Graduate it there so it's not bumpy when you're wearing it. It's a bit of an awkward angle, but probably the best way for you to see. And the same thing again. Now that seam. Now you'll see I have there cut off my overcasting. Not a disaster. I just need to redo that small bit. So what I'm going to do is press this open, and then I will take it back and overcast that. Probably here probably here I will overcast it together, just to keep it strong. So I'm going to press that, and then I will overcast the bit that I just clipped. So the next part in this is to attach the pockets to the sides, the outside seam of the legs. You do this before you stitch the outside seam, and you have 4 pocket pieces and obviously 4 leg pieces. So you attach 1 pocket piece to 1 leg piece. So this is one side of the leg and 1 pocket piece, and you stitch a narrow seam down here, and then that will be pressed open afterwards to allow for the stitching of the side seams of the trousers, the outside seams. So you have open, and see these yellow dots? That's where you leave it open to put your hand into the pocket. So separate all your pieces of pocket separate onto the separate sides of the trouser. It's not difficult. Once you've pinned it in, you soon see what you're doing. So literally a narrow seam here. So I'm going to sew these in, and then I will re-video when I've got there. So here we are with the pockets sewn on like elephant's ears to the side seams. I'm just going to fold the next layer up because I don't think my last explanation was particularly clear. So here is 1 pocket flap pressed out and the other, and then here is the other half of the trousers, and you match up the pocket bags that way. So now the job is to sew down the side seams, leaving this much open to put your hands in the pockets. So that's the next step. So now the side seams are stitched up, and you can see that the pockets are pressed open and the side seams are pressed open. The pocket bags haven't been stitched together just yet because we're going to top stitch the pocket opening on the front to hold the pocket where it needs to be. So that is when you're wearing them, so that the pocket faces forward. So top stitch on the front. I'll set up and show you what that looks like. Okay, so here I am with it set up in the machine. There is my pocket opening, and I'm stitching on the right side of the trousers. This is the front side, and I'm just going to stitch from pin to pin, 1/2 millimetre away from that folded edge, just to hold everything where it needs to be. This does not go from the top of the pocket bag to the bottom of the pocket bag. It just goes for the opening. So now here we are, and I'm hoping you can see that top stitching there just to hold the pocket forward. So now we turn the trousers through again. Still working on the pockets. Just turn them through. Right. And we're at the top of the pockets. And here, where they're attached to the seam allowance, we need to clip. So you hold them together like that, and just clip through the seam allowance to the seam. And this is so the top of your seam can lay flat and your pocket bags can be stitched together. And that's what's next, stitching the pocket bags together. So we get those under our needle, get everything else out of the way. Check where the stitching is, and simply go around our pocket bags. So that clip will let the seam lie flat, and we go around our pocket bags. So now you can see we have our closed pocket bags, our open seam, our seam for the pocket folded forward, and our open seam again at the top. Now in the pattern, it doesn't tell you to do anything to strengthen these points at the top and bottom of the pockets where the seam was clipped, but I always do. But I do that when the trousers are completely finished. So the next thing we need to do is to tack the pockets to the front to keep them in place while we're doing the waistband. So I'm going to machine tack, which means I'll put my machine on a long stitch, and I won't knot my thread. And all I'm going to do is run a line of tacking stitches just on here along the top to hold that down, because when we make the waistband, the top of the pocket will get slightly caught in it, which is part of holding the pocket into place. So all we're going to do is put some tacking in, which will be removed when we're finished. Right, so now I've pressed over the correct amount for the waistband and pressed a little seam underneath. It's just an elastic waist, nothing complicated. And do you see, can you see that? Here's the pocket. Can you see how the pocket's caught in there, which is why we needed to tack it? So now I'm going to stitch right along the edge here. And I'm going to leave a gap in the back, or the side, back probably, for the elastic. The pattern wants you to make buttonholes at the front, but I didn't want those. So I'm just going to leave a gap for myself to thread the elastic through when I get to the back of the waistband. So it's pinned and ready for me to stitch down. Right, so here we are. My waistband is all stitched down. And now I am threading my elastic through. I've just got ordinary waistband elastic and a threader. These are quite good, but you can just do it with a safety pin. And I'm just going to go in through the gap I left and thread it around. Right, so as you can see, I now have the elastic in the waistband all stitched in. So I'm just going to take a moment here to strengthen the edges of the pockets, as I said before. So what I've done is, where open. Where the pocket comes forward and the seam needs to be open just below it, just there where the pins are, see? I am going to make a narrow band of tight zigzag right across there. It will show at the bottom of the pocket, but not too badly. That will just help strengthen that part there where it could be a bit weak from having no overcasting on that raw edge. So on the outside it will just look like a bit like a buttonhole band. So I'm going to do that on both sides just to add a bit of strength there. So here I am ready to hem. I've pressed up the amount I need and I'm just going to stitch a narrow hem and then the trousers will be finished. So there they are, baggy, comfy cotton summer trousers with pockets, made and ready to wear. The light is bad because it's got late, but there they are. I couldn't figure out how to get a good picture of me actually wearing them, so I've just hung them on the door. I'll try and get a picture. I'm going to make another pair and I think I have enough of the fabric left to make a top, which would be quite nice because it would look like a jumpsuit without the inconvenience of actually being a jumpsuit, but we'll see if I can find a pattern for that. Okay, so there we are, trousers finished. Thanks for watching. So here they are. I've since made myself the black pair. They're just comfy, baggy summer trousers. And typically enough, since I've made them, it's done nothing but rain. Thanks for watching.